lot of this conference has been about patient empowerment and giving patients more and more access to their own data and their medical information. But on the flip side, people are also wondering, how do patients know exactly what to do with all of this data? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, fundamentally, life is tough. What am I supposed to do with my tax returns? There are so many different ways I might make a mistake. There are so many ways I could save more money if I understood it all. And if I have a really, really complicated life, I'll probably hire an accountant, and the cost of it will be worth it. It's kind of the same with medical data. If things are straightforward, you can do it yourself, and you can learn and understand it. And certainly, I mean, just like with taxes, when TurboTax came along, a lot of people who used to use an accountant could start doing their taxes on their own, because there were some things that were just so easy to automate, some basic principles that you could easily put in the software. But then if you have a really complicated financial life, and in the same way if you have a really complicated medical data life, you should seek a physician or a concierge doctor, or depending on what you've got in the context. Life is not simple. It's still hard to know whom to choose, how do you pay for this, all these other things. But it is your data. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have the ability, and if you're sick, have insurance pay for someone to help guide you through all this complicated stuff. The reality is, of course, in the end, you have to make your own choices because nobody knows. You have a 30% chance of, survival, or you have a 30% chance of dying. How do you make the decision whether you want a comfortable short life versus a more painful long life, but you get to see your children graduate? What's the trade-off between chemo and the psychological after effects? People actually have different preferences, but in the end, you don't know. 30% doesn't mean yes, but it doesn't mean definitely no either. And people will get more comfortable with this as they become better educated. Right now, I was just talking with somebody, people think genetic information is some kind of special magical information that's different from the fact that your grandmother died of Alzheimer's. That tells you a ton, quite independent of your genetics. It tells you have a chance. What exactly is your chance? Well, if your genetics say your chance is higher, then yes, your chance is higher. But it's all still numbers multiplied one by another. No matter what happens, it all fits in this one pie chart of after 150 years, you will be dead. It's like anything that could happen to you is inside that circle. And people are, if you looked in their heads, they'd have this huge monstrous, like a 400% chance of dying when you add up all the different terrible things they think are going to happen to them. So if they can think rationally, which is hard, but if they can be trained, if they can learn in school, if they can have friends who know this stuff, if society in general is more educated, then when something happens to people and they want to understand this, they'll be more prepared.
And there's still a role for physicians as well in this.
Yeah. There's a role for physicians, for genetics counselors, for psychologists. I mean, for everybody from a friend who will listen to your troubles up to a psychiatrist who will help you remember what your mother did to you when you were 2. People have different ranges of needs and different susceptibilities.
There was a comment made at the conference that one day 80% of healthcare, that technology will replace physicians. What do you think about that?
Both sides of the equation are wrong. First of all, it's not just physicians who provide healthcare. And second, the 80% is a bogus number. I mean, how do you pull that apart? So it's a great statement to foster discussion, but what a physician does, there's diagnostics, there's actually, there's surgery, there's all kinds of different things doctors do. There's running tests, there's looking in your eyes, there's taking your medical history and then sort of taking your personal history. The summer you got whatever, you lost a lot of weight. Was that the summer you broke up with your boyfriend, or was it the summer you were in Africa and might have had some undiagnosed intestinal problem. It's those things that a good doctor will pull out, and sometimes a good nurse will pull them out. A good nurse can replace a doctor in most things. So it's just not that simple.
And switching gears a little bit, so you're an angel investor and you invest in a lot of health companies.
Right.
Do you think all these health companies know exactly what they're doing?
No. So, I mean, obviously you invest, you look at the quality of the management team and so forth, but I'll give one example. I won't name them but I would never ever invest with them. So it's a company, one of these companies that does biomarkers, and they do blood draws and so forth. And their idea was, well, we will set up a network of phlebotomists to draw blood, and then we'll analyze it in our labs, and we'll give you a lot of really interesting data, sort of like 23andMe, but for real-time biomarker stuff. And I paid them $250, which, you know, in the first case is a bit much when you're considering being an investor. They don't even give you a freebie. And then they couldn't find a phlebotomist in New York, which was kind of surprising. But eventually they found somebody, and so I was expecting, and they helped me make an appointment, and I was expecting a few days in advance to get a nice little email from, you know, RN at companyname.com, and with a little signature file and sort of time and date, and please fast the night before, whatever. Nothing. So finally I emailed them and I said, you know, I'm doing this blood draw. Am I supposed to not eat the night before? What do you want me to do? And I don't remember, but I didn't get what I considered a satisfactory answer. But I figured, why screw this thing up? So I fasted, which isn't that hard. And then I finally got an email from somebody her email was more like SusieQ@hotmail.com. No sig file, nothing, just like, you know, see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. So this woman shows up with a purse. She pulls her stuff out of the purse and she looks and she says, oh, you know, this is a little crumpled. I'm sorry, it just broke, but I assure you it's totally sterile.
Oh man, I'm sure that made you feel really reassured.
Yeah, but I believed her. So I put up my arm and she took the blood, and then I noticed 2 or 3 days later that I had a bruise, which is always a sign of it not great blood draw. But I didn't hear from them. So 2 days later or something, I'm out at Rock Health. I'm about to give a talk, and I get an email from the CEO of this company, who is the guy I had talked to, and he said, you know, Dear Esther, please call me. There's something unusual in your results. Phone number. And I think, I'm going on stage in 10 minutes. I'm not going to call this guy. So I wrote back and I said, well, please tell me what is it. I'm in a talk. I can't talk to you right now. So I go on stage, and I'm, of course, a little distracted. God, what's wrong?
Right. I'm sure you, understandably.
So I get an email back from him afterwards saying, your potassium levels are 4 times normal, and you should call a doctor. Don't even bother with me. Just call a doctor. So I'm thinking, geez, it's now 6 p.m. in California. Everybody I know in New York there are a bunch of doctors I could call. The first one I always think of is my sister Emily, who's a cardiologist. But I didn't want to call her because I knew what she would say. She would say, Esty, I told you, you consumers, you shouldn't be messing with this stuff. Leave medicine to doctors. Because she thinks what I'm doing is close to being dangerous and certainly presumptuous, and here was evidence that she was right. So instead I Googled and found what you probably know as a professional, and I've now discovered as someone who's learning, that a high potassium level, it's like leaving the lens cap on your camera. It's like the first sign of just a careless blood draw. The platelets get mangled and crushed, and all this potassium is released. And
hemolyzed.
Yeah, and so you see that, and you don't think the person has 4 times the normal potassium level. If they look like a normal person, you think, oh, bad blood draw.
Right.
But for the CEO of a company whose business this is not to know that, it was scandalous. Investors should know what the hell they're doing when they invest in these companies, and so should their customers, which is why I believe in FDA regulation, like for 23andMe. It's annoying for us sometimes, but it's good for us, and it keeps out the riffraff. I mean, the last thing we want is 20 competitors offering scam nutraceutical treatments for your genome. We'd rather have a real market that's certified where people offer quality stuff.
So it seems like there's still work to be done in getting all of these companies up to speed on getting the right relationship between the patients and the physicians. That's also going to take some time. But
it's not going to take some time and then it will be done. It's a perennial. Life is like that. Mm-hmm. The more we know, the more decisions we need to make, the harder it gets. We'll never reach nirvana, but we will get better.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any current plans to travel into space soon?
If Amada Health or 23andMe or any of my other companies ends up making me worth $40 million, I'll go right away.
And why is space so interesting to you?
It's just like medicine. It's an unsolved problem. It's something to explore, and ultimately I think it's going to be helpful for all humans.
Mm-hmm. And have you been involved with research in space?
I've been, peripherally, including space medicine and just exploring. It's exciting.